Any questions before we start?
Can I say shit and fuck and...
Yes.
Okay.
As much as you like. So, Pep, thanks so much for joining us on the Xero Cafe podcast. And of course, I think a lot of people will know you, and probably when you search Google for Xero specialist, it's your picture that pops up. But how did you get started with Xero? You also didn't study Xero at school, right? How did you get started? How did you roll into Xero?
I was on like a marketing consultant, a bit of SEO, PPC, all that stuff. And then one of my clients actually handed me a book by the Eisenberg brothers, Waiting for a Cat to Bark, I think.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And, then started Googling, and they had a blog back then. This is like 2008, maybe.
Yeah.
And a few people were writing about it. And then there was an internet marketing company, Mind Valley, that's still around. Now they do personal development, whatever. But back then they were also writing about their split tests, and it was like make money online type of blog. And so that's kind of how I got started. And then when I wanted to start my own marketing blog in 2011, I was just I knew I needed to niche down. I can't just write about marketing. And so I started to basically do some market research. What kind of niches of marketing are not that competitive, let's say. And then my analysis showed that CRO was very uncompetitive, like not very many blogs. I think Invesp had a blog back then, and I'm not sure if Wider Funnel had, maybe they didn't. Like there were very few, and the articles were very basic and superficial and short. And I was like, I could, I could build something here. And so I decided to start a CRO blog, and also by starting the blog, I decided to become a CRO person. And when you specialize in something, you actually start getting better at that one thing because you only do that one thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's why I like to go on stage and talk about Xero, especially in the beginning. I just signed up for talks about Xero. I think in 2012 or something. Just signed up because I want to know more about this, and then if they pick me, then I'll have to actually.
Totally. Like I was writing blog posts basically as an investigative journalist.
Yeah.
Like I picked a topic, and then I forced myself to do research, like everything that's been written about a topic. I'm going to compile it into a summary posts. That was my blogging strategy, at the very start.
Yeah, and I think I read that basically your blogging strategy was also, if I write an article, it has to be the best article in the world about this particular topic, right?
Exactly right. Yeah. So, because as I said, the other CRO blogs were not very good, and so I created like internal standards that if I do this, like write long form articles, every claim backed up by data, all that stuff, then I can dominate. And I did.
Yeah, exactly. And for anyone that has ever read a CXL blog post, you're very aware that they are indeed long form. There's usually not a couple of hundred words, there's a couple of thousand words maybe. And as someone working in CRO and talking about copy more than once a week, you probably heard, just like I have, that people say, well, people don't read online.
It is true. They skim. We spend a lot of time looking at text, but do we read every single word? Typically not. But of course, it depends on how interested we are in something. Like if it's like a bunch of fine print legalese, but like there's a possibility that I'm signing away my house, I'm going to read everything, right?
Yeah.
The same way, like if you're actually deeply interested in the topic, you're going to read it. But knowing that most people are not deeply interested, most people are, waiting for in a line in Starbucks or whatever, then they're going to skim. They're just going to casually browse, and then you need to design your copy and write your copy in a way that is suitable for people who don't read everything.
Yeah. So that didn't mean for you that you just, okay, people just skim, so let's make my articles shorter. So how did you go about that?
The long article decision was threefold. So one was that the superficial, if your article is 300 to 500 words, you can't really add depth to it.
Mhm.
So if to really go deep, you need more words. That's one. Two, back then there was data, which is still true today, that if you look which kind of blog posts get the most backlinks, SEO backlinks, or most social media shares, it's long articles. There are very few exceptions. Seth Godin, but it's because he's a celebrity. He can write 100-word articles, but everybody else, I mean, it's still true today that you need to write long articles to get backlinks. Because again, when other people write their blog post and they want to link to a source that's reputable, they look at your long ass blog post. Hey, this seems dense. It's good enough.
Exactly.
I'll link to this one.
I haven't read it, but it's very long, so it's probably better for my personal brand if I share long because it looks interesting.
People might think that I actually read it.
Yeah, exactly. And so, what would you say in general if you would compare copy to all the other elements on a page? What is the impact of copy? How important is copy if we're just skimming? And
totally. Well, it really depends on what is the brand. Because Apple doesn't need too much copy, even though if you look at their sales pages, they add quite a bit. But visual brands, obviously, if it's Gucci handbags or whatever, they need less words, right? But for a lot of, I would say, majority of the products, it is the copy that sells them. So anything that is expensive, anything that is complicated, your B2B software or, anything that is not that visual needs a lot of copy. So at CXL Institute, for instance, so we sell online courses and we have like more than 50. Each course has their own sales page. Then we have PPC landing pages and webinar landing pages, and these are all copy heavy. It's like mostly words, minimalistic design, which is kind of like our visual brand is minimalistic design. And so we learned very quickly that in order to increase the conversion rate on those pages, we need to make the words better. We need to improve the copy. So for us, copy is like 90%. In general, like a couple of years ago, I think 2018 or something, we built our own CXL A/B test, basically library, looking back at all the tests we've run over the years, and what was the test about? And we were basically trying to figure out what kind of tests proved to be winners. Mm-hmm. And in a nutshell, most of the winning tests were copy focused. It might have been, not like a major 2,000 word rewrite, but like adjusting wording here, the better headline, better button copy, better presentation, better value proposition, things like that. So copy is huge. And obviously there's the Unbound stat that came out from their, I don't remember how many thousands of landing pages that they found that copy is 2 times more influential than design. I think copy predicts 28% of the conversion rate versus design was like 13 or something.
And how do you go about finding where the copy is well up for improvement? Because I feel, for me personally, that it's not necessarily a black hole, but it's very difficult to find out where copy is lacking. Because if you go to Google Analytics, it's not going to tell you where your copy needs improvement.
Totally,
same, and for a lot of research or heat maps. I mean, I can figure out where stuff is broken in general, but finding out where copy is broken, how to improve it, that's very hard. Not a lot of tests are designed to do that. So what would be your tip for people to go? How do you go about finding out?
Well, I would say that it's a lot like any type of conversion research. Let's say that we just look at the website and we're gonna see how can we make it better. Now, if the website is not very optimized, it's like crappy design and then has typos and you don't know what they're talking about, it's very easy to say, hey, make it more clear, what this is about, and you need to improve this design this and that way. But if you have above average design and copy, it's very hard to eyeball it. So what you have now is that you need to do research. You need to do conversion research, quantitative, qualitative, to understand what the problems are. And so optimizing copy is very much the same, unless it's really obviously terrible and you can see, hey, I don't understand what this is about. You need to do research to understand what is wrong with it. So the conversion heuristics, like where we need to improve the clarity, is very applicable to copy. If I don't understand what this is about, I'm not going to buy. So you rate the clarity, so copy testing is the methodology. It's also the SaaS tool that we built and launched this year, which is exactly what it does. It asks questions, research questions about copy from the audience that the website is intended for, essentially, to understand where are the sources of friction. Because in behavioral design, in order to increase the conversion in order to increase conversions, you need to increase motivation and lower friction, right? In a nutshell.
Yeah.
So in the copy, same way, like what can we do to make it more persuasive, and what can we do to reduce friction? And how do you find out? Well, ask the people. Ask the people, how do they feel about it? Do they feel it's clear? Do they feel that this argument is speaking to them? And so on.
And you, with copytesting.com, you're collecting more and more input, not only for your own side but also for copytesting.com, the clients. So what do you see is usually the issue with the copy? Is it not phrased right? Is it confusing? Is it like off brand? It's not matching with the overall brand perception? What are the issues that you see?
I would say that the most common issues is still clarity, as I already mentioned. Clarity is like people tend to be super vague, and especially you can see this in B2B copy, where they, companies often use big words, fancy words that sound nice but actually not saying anything. Like we're using the latest AI technology to improve conversions, and then it's like, well, what does that actually mean? Like
What technology?
yeah, like what are you actually doing there? And like, and like, is it an A/B test? Like you don't actually understand. So
And is it AI or is it machine learning or is it
and what does is it an A/B testing tool or whatever? So clarity is a big issue.
So does it mean that people need to be more specific? Is that usually the resolution for this?
More specific, as well as use language that you would actually use in a conversation with a fellow human being.
So people give you the data. Okay, we want to have this evaluated. Where are the problems usually? Is it the headlines? Is it like product descriptions, call to actions? What are people visiting sites usually stumble upon?
I think there are two types of issues that we find, and one is like that I call copy blind spots. Copy blind spots is that you write all these things about your product or service. People read through the whole thing and they still don't get it. They still have questions. So in a normal situation, in the physical world, I go to the shop, there's a salesperson, I can ask questions, there's a back and forth. Yeah. Online, copy is all you have. So if your copy doesn't answer every single question a prospect might have, you're losing out on money. Yeah. But often when you know the product so well and you're writing the copy about your product, you forget what it's like to be somebody who doesn't know this product. So you don't mention every single thing. And some people that come to the site, they read it, they're like, oh, I don't know, like, does it do this? Does it do that? And you're not gonna call, you're not gonna like file a support ticket and ask. Maybe if there's live chat on the website, can quickly sort it out. But if it's a chatbot, and chatbots are usually idiots, you just abandon purchase. There are two studies that I've seen on this where Norman Nielsen had a study saying that 20% of purchases are abandoned because of poor copy, incomplete copy. And IDC, a market research company, looked at a bunch of B2B websites and said even 50% of purchases are abandoned because they don't contain the full information. People read it and they still have questions. So copy testing will tell you where your blind spots are, which is huge. 2 is that people have objections. Like you say something, you claim something, and they're like, I don't know about that. And so unless you figure out what is it that they have, like a problem with,
Yeah.
So here's an example. So there's this company called Supply. They make razor blades. The Gillette Mach 3 has like 3 or 4 blades, like the mainstream brand. And Supply has a single blade razor. And a lot of people had questions and I don't believe a single blade can actually be as good. And their copy didn't really spend too much time explaining why a single blade is better, or like why prefer a single blade. And another thing was this Supply blade is $75 compared to there's a $1 shave club. So $75 is a very expensive non-electric razor.
Yep.
And people had all kinds of issues with it, all kinds of problems, and the copy on the website did not address any single thing. So people come, they're like, oh, what is this made of? Or like, where is it made? Is it made in China or America? Or like all kinds of things. And if you don't know what problems people have, then you have a problem.
Yeah, so the copy itself might still be fine, but you're still leaving questions unanswered.
Questions unanswered, and you don't handle objections. And online, like in a sales situation, you can they say, oh, well, I don't know about that or whatever. Then you can say, well, actually it is so good, blah, 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 because all these things. Online, you have to preempt, the objection is coming. And so you have to write about it, address it. Yeah, because that's your only chance.
For me, the most obvious example of this popping up in research was on a website where, and this actually it was more like also a cultural thing, where we saw that when we tested the website specifically with Germans, they almost always went through the terms and conditions page. That happened nowhere.
Wow.
But Germans went to the terms and conditions page to look up for the questions that were unanswered in the copy.
Like delivery times, or
exactly, delivery time. And okay, if I want to return the product, what happens?
Oh yeah,
and I'm very interested in doing that.
And all the rows is cut exactly at 22 centimeters.
Exactly, that's what they were interested in, and that's something we didn't see in other countries. But still, it adding that information for non-Germans already had an impact also had a positive impact on conversion, because we didn't see that behavior, but those people apparently still had those questions. So yeah, my tip would be test your website at least with Germans.
Totally, yeah. Well, I mean, whoever you're selling to. So the way you want to conduct copy testing is, sometimes it matter sometimes you sell mass market products. So basically anybody could be your audience. And if you're selling pants, like everybody wears pants, maybe unless your pants are like ridiculous or very expensive.
But with everyone working from home these days, might be less people wearing pants. But yeah.
might be. But basically, the way you conduct copy testing, you think about your audience, and then you need to recruit them from somewhere. If it's mass market, it's easier. If it's more specialized, the beautiful thing about the internet is you can go to like Facebook groups that are interest-based. These are all people who want to lose weight, or these people are into yoga or whatever. And if yoga people are your audience, you can say, hey, would you please come, read my website and answer some questions about it, and then I'll pay you money. It's kind of like user testing works. Similar fashion. Or with B2B audiences, of course, it's trickier, because like if your copy is about, organic traffic, it can't be just anybody. In fact, we tested this. We had a client who was, I think, a Dutch company who service for organic traffic AI something. And we had regular people read it and answer research questions, and then they were like, what does like the daily car traffic have to do with organic food? Like they didn't get it. So for B2B audiences, the context, like who's reading it, really matters, and so that gets trickier. And so with copytesting.com, our service, we have realized that delivering B2B audiences is actually it's an unsolved problem. It's a big problem. So the future of the product is actually like we're dedicating a lot of resource into delivering B2B audiences.
Yeah, because I can imagine that you guys already building your own audiences to test this, right? But I can imagine that for a lot of companies, it's relevant to actually be able to basically give you a list of their audience,
totally,
email addresses to approach them.
Exactly. So using your own panel might work, your own email list people. The problem with that is that if they're already familiar with you and your service, there's bias in there. They don't have all the questions. They know how your stuff works. So they're not actually the best audience to read your web copy and give you data on it, insights on it. So you want actually people who have never heard of you, who are like skeptical about you.
Yeah. Well, it depends a bit on what you want to optimize, right? I mean, if it's a B2B environment where people do now reorder stuff, then that might also be very relevant to just validate it with your existing audience, right?
It could be, yeah. Yeah, with CXL and copy testing, like there's a symbiosis. So we have, some 125,000 people in the CXL newsletter database. And so we are recruiting our B2B panel from the CXL email list. So we have it's mainly marketers. So we have a very strong marketing panel. So any title you want, SEO director, brand people, you name it, we have
that's
them.
Easy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's easy. Security warehouse managers, not so much.
Exactly, that's a bigger challenge. Hey, what I want to know. So, what are the things when running experiments on copy, when validating copy? Are there any particular things to take into account there versus regular or more visual copy? I think to me it feels usually it's a bit easier. I mean, every tool there can be quite a lot of things that go wrong. Different browsers, different devices, of course. Copy always feels a bit relatively easier, but I'm not sure.
Totally. I think you could even set up a test with WYSIWYG editors,
Yeah.
Nothing much difficult there. The problem, one challenge with changing copy is like if you think that changing one word will make a big difference, it usually doesn't, because it's a small change, and since people mostly don't read, they skim, they might not even notice that you changed a couple of words. Although I have seen a very particular case for CXL itself, where a single word made a huge difference. Okay. So our CXL brand, like we're kind of taking this hostile brand approach. We're running a lot of ads saying like it's too difficult, the CXL Institute content, and like need to work hard. This is not easy. So we're kind of like anti selling it, or and so I've wrote a version of the CXL Institute copy that was very much like over the top. This is too difficult. You're not good enough for this. You're going to fail. You're probably a loser. And so I used this word badass in the copy. Like, it takes a real badass to actually go through this. And I didn't think twice about this word. And then when I looked at the results of the copy test, I was floored. So out of 20 people that we tested it on, which is, a good sample for a qualitative, assessment, probably out of 20 people, like 16 had a problem with it. Okay. They like singled out this one word. I was like, whoa. I even forgot I wrote it, but they noticed this one word. So it's possible the one word can trigger. And obviously, if it's the headline or a button copy that is more isolated from the rest of the copy, it can have an impact.
Yeah. Yeah, it's surprising sometimes how a single element can infuriate people. I had a similar thing with people seeing on a gift store, e-commerce gifting, where people had to fill in the phone number of the person they're sending the gift to. It was
Oh
a
yeah.
mandatory field, no explanation, and people really got pissed off about that. Like it's I don't have it because why should you?
Sure.
It's a surprise. So are you going to call this person? What's happening?
Yeah, yeah,
Or are you
yeah,
going
yeah,
to
yeah.
spam them? They really got pissed off. So it's funny to see how small things that you didn't think twice about can tick off people. Do you have
Absolutely.
so what I also wanted to talk about? We just talked a lot about copy. Um, you've written a book about differentiation, right?
Well, I haven't written about it. I've written the book so far. I only have a blog post, but I started to write a book about differentiation. I started to write one this last winter,
Yeah.
and then COVID hit, and suddenly it didn't seem relevant anymore somehow at a time. So I kind of left it, and now time has passed, and I guess we're all used to the new normal. I think
Hmm.
we're past like in the spring times, March, April, there was a lot of anxiety and like what's going to happen. Now we know it's going to be like this for another year or something, so it's
Yeah.
calm. And so, yeah, I do intend to pick it up. I have a little bit changed the direction of where I'm taking the book. So basically, strategy, differentiation, and branding.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a holy trinity. They all play together and affect each other. And so I do a lot of reading and thinking about this. And
Yeah, but when I read about your tweets or blogs about this, there seems to be there's a very a lot of frustration almost with how brands approach this and go for sameness all the time or
that
and
is
don't
right.
differentiate enough. So I was wondering, so where does this come from? How do you look at this and what are brands doing wrong basically?
Well, I don't know exactly how it all came to be, but if you look at competing companies in basically any mature category, they're all saying the exact same thing about themselves as if they were the only one in the world doing that thing.
Yeah.
And SaaS is an easy one to pick on, or especially if we look at like super saturated categories like email marketing. They all say, "Oh, easy to send, easy to use email marketing, or send beautiful newsletter." I mean, what
So,
email marketing software doesn't send newsletters, and you can,
yeah.
it's just
So
it baffles me. Yeah,
basically, if you would do a research and just block out the logos and just ask people which brand this is, they won't be able to say that based on the
exactly
copy
right.
and
And
yeah.
then I tried hard to find a brand that is truly differentiated in SaaS. And so I asked a lot of people, and often people came back to me and saying, "Oh yeah, Mailchimp, they are really differentiated." And so if you go to Mailchimp's website, like everything they say is plain vanilla, something that anybody could say. Especially now there's all-in-one tool even. But of course, what is different about Mailchimp is that Mailchimp is the market leader. They're the
Mhm.
biggest email marketing software out there.
Yeah.
Now, there's this really great book called How Brands Grow. It's nothing about branding, actually, it's just some marketing studies. And it makes an eloquent case that awareness or market penetration matters way more than differentiation. So the fact that people know that you exist, you become part of their consideration set,
Yeah.
especially like in B2B, because when I'm deciding which email marketing software to use, I only consider maybe 4 or 5 different ones, and these are most certainly tools that I have heard of.
Yeah.
So once you have passed that hurdle, people have heard about you, they know that you exist, differentiation matters much less. So MailChimp doesn't need to be different. Others need to be different from MailChimp. It's the same way, like let's say new A/B testing software comes out tomorrow, and if it's exactly like Optimizely or VWO, or then it's like, well, why would I ever consider this new tool,
Yeah.
right? And if it's just like Google Optimize, again, like, well, I
Why would I
mean,
bother? Yeah.
why would I bother with this new tool? And this tool is dead on arrival. You cannot come to the market as an unknown, as an upstart, in a mature market and think you can grab some market share. I mean, maybe if you spend a lot of money, like it has happened in the CRM category where Monday.com came. Not CRM, this is project management. So Monday.com, I don't know how many billions they spent on ads or like millions. But like I think they bought their way into awareness. So I think it's totally possible. But most of us don't have that kind of money, and still there are no guarantees that you can buy your way into it, without just burning the money. So as a small company, you definitely want to have differentiating angle. Same with phones, like we have Samsung phones, Apple phones, and whatever. If you're an upstart phone making company, like they all use the same Snapdragon, stuff inside. So like, why would I use this new brand unless you're considerably cheaper, and you can do that sustainably, or
I've seen this great. I think it's a TED talk, animated TED talk, and they explain why companies that are similar always are in the same location, the physical location. So it's like car sales dealers. Why are they always next to each other? Wouldn't it make way more sense to spread out? And they explain why it actually works for them to be in the same location, and that's talking about physical space. But I think a similar trends is happening with online. It benefits those companies that are established already to become more similar, I guess.
Probably because like let's say how B2B software purchasing works is that you look at the superficial like features. Let's take drift versus intercom. So they used to have some differentiation. Now, if we look at their feature set, basically it's identical.
Yeah.
The only thing that's different is the brand and how they kind of like position themselves. And Drift has changed their strategic narrative even twice now. And I think it's because of the competitor benchmarking, why the sameness occurs. It's like you always look at, how is that competitor different or better than you are? And if they have that feature, we're going to have that feature too, which is why features can never be a sustainable source of differentiation. Yeah. And as B2B buyers, they're gonna make like a matrix. They're like, oh, how are they different? And if they're not different, then it's about sales negotiation or
exactly,
all those things.
You read some books on branding and differentiation. I think you even said, well, actually, most books are not about differentiation at all. So what would be a good? Is there a book that stood out for you on differentiation?
There's actually there are very few books out there. I mean, the classic Differentiate or Die. I think that's still a good one.
Yeah,
I like that one. And today, basically, if I had to say, like, what is one sustainable competitive advantage you can have or differentiation, it's brand. Yeah. So there's a book called Different by Young Mi Moon, and that's about how you can differentiate through brand. That's a good one that I can recommend. But otherwise, there's surprisingly little written about differentiation. It's kind of like an afterthought, really. And and it shows, because if you look at categories, whatever business categories, like companies are so similar. Especially like my favorite example is hotels. It's like every single hotel has the same type of check-in process, and then you go to the room. They have in the bathroom, they have the same stuff. They have the soap and the shampoo and the shower cap, but no toothpaste, no toothbrush. Why?
Yeah.
Why are they all like that? It's because they copy each other. So it would be very easy to just be the anti-pattern, like exceed the expectation. Like, what can a hotel check-in look like if everything was possible? And everything is possible. I think there's some low-hanging fruits there.
Yeah. So so branding is for established companies. Branding is the only thing basically that's left to differentiate on. But for startups, you say startups. That's where your opportunity is if you want to basically attack the established order. So what are things that they should differentiate on? Are there specific areas that are especially effective, or can it be anything?
Well, there is kind of like a laundry list of things. I mean, there is if you're a startup, you can be the first one doing something like, say, copytesting.com is the only tool for this thing. It's not going to be like that forever. Like there are going to be copycats and other things. So, but there is a first to market advantage that you can ride on for a while.
Yeah.
You can be the innovator in a space. Also, like Tesla cars. Tesla used to be the electric car company. Now, of course, every car company is producing electric cars, and soon their batteries will be same as Tesla. So unless Tesla can play the innovators game and be always 2 steps ahead, I mean, remains to be seen if over 10 years they can keep that up. But
Yeah.
so that is a way. And then you can specialize for a specific target market. So it's like invoicing for heavy metal bands. Of
Yeah.
course, there needs to be enough market there to support you, or you can attribute leadership. So attribute leadership basically is that you double down for one use case, or you're better at some aspect. Like Zappos, which Amazon bought many years ago, they were known for customer service.
Yeah.
Or WP Engine used to be known for super fast WordPress hosting. Now of course very competitive space, but I think the WP Engine still owns that in people's minds, that positioning. So you choose one attribute that you want to be best at. So if I were to build a new A/B testing tool, I don't know, what attribute could you double down on? Like the best code editor, or like, I don't know, probably not enough. Like
Yeah.
you need to think about it. So that's or you make your products in a special way. So all beer is made like this, but we make the beer that way. Like
Exactly.
there's something different about it. Yeah, and of course customer experience. Like customer experience is kind of like brand. Anybody could differentiate on experience.
Yeah. And I think especially in B2B, there are way more chances to do that, right? Companies being traditional.
Well, I mean, even in plain services, like imagine a plumbing service, because plumbing is a
Yeah.
commodity. Like so many plumbers, but what if the way they answer the phone or send you reminders, and like you could go above and beyond. Like
Yeah.
you could really differentiate, and when you call there, they could have something going on like that is like super VIP service. I don't know.
Yeah, and well, everything is a subscription these days. So maybe there's a subscription for plumbing, and but it's hard to sustain, right? And it's easy to copy those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, if it's successful, it will most certainly be copied. So, I mean, there is advantage of being first. There's a lot of examples of being the original. Coca-Cola, the original cola, and so on. So, but the execution of obviously, like whether you're able to execute on that vision, because we also know, a lot of cases where first ones faded away. Social networks or whatever.
Of course, we have a lot of guests here in the Xero Cafe. Do you have any maybe clients or people in the industry that you think we should have on the show? Who should we invite?
Let's see. Let me think about the names that I actually follow myself. What would be a good perspective is because I think CRO, is still in many organizations seen as insignificant, tactical. Doesn't get enough attention
Yeah.
compared to let's sales or like something that's really important and big. So it would be interesting to have maybe even like a panel like type of thing with like some big company, somebody who's has experimentation built in as a thing, and some who are like I have a
Yeah.
back and forth. A SaaS leader that I greatly admire and follow is Jason Lemkin. He has that SaaSter conference. So he doesn't probably have anything to say about conversion optimization per se, but he's an interesting business guy.
Well, if you can connect me with him, then that would be great. We can ask him for the show. And but you said Xero is often not seen as important as sales. I think everyone will agree with that. But why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think there's some narratives about CRO that really stuck with people where your classic this is the button copy thing or the color testing.
Yeah.
And so these small things have really got into a way of people taking it seriously. We need, I mean,
We need to focus on the bigger things.
bigger things for sure. Optimism, experiment. I mean, because lean startup as a concept is experimentation, right?
Yeah.
Build, measure, learn. I mean, we're doing the same thing, except they had the better story, and
Yeah.
they're talking about it in a bigger scale. Like finding whether what you sell does somebody want to pay for it. So maybe CRO people have also chosen a smaller battleground, and maybe we've been talking about should we be called something else for a decade, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's still something to it where if it's like the word growth hacking, you say growth hacking, people roll their eyes.
Yeah.
And it started off meaning one thing, and then now it's a crypto jerk. It's the same guy as a growth hacker. It's a derogatory term more than anything. So maybe it's also like we need to like growth engineering or has a positive spin to it. So maybe there. I mean, experimentation I think has a positive connotation to it.
Yeah.
And also when CRO now with the rise of RevOps, it's chief revenue officer. Maybe it should be called experimentation.
I also like the term validation. Experimentation still, if I ask that for people, experimentation also feels somehow has a like a random connotation. Like people think, okay, we experiment, we just try random stuff because that's also not what it is, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely an interesting discussion and probably something we'll continue doing for the next 10 years. how should we brand ourselves?
Exactly,
but
while
again,
still
branding.
being conversion rate optimization. Yeah.
Exactly. Pep, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. My final question for you would actually be something I at least look forward to each year is the state of conversion optimization report that you guys every do. Can we expect it this year too? It's a weird year, of course, but
I think so. I'm not in charge of writing it or doing the research, but usually we ship it like first week of December or so. I think we're gonna do it.
Good. Well, if the survey is still open, we'll add a link to it in the show notes of the podcast, so people can sign up. Or if the survey is not open yet, we can just link to the report directly. We'll do that. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great day. Bye bye.